Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be your MC today. My name is Betsy Keizan Morgan. We have a very special day today. It's two services in one. The Spring Ohigan service starts today, followed by the 33 Kanban Pilgrimage service. We will begin with the Spring Ohigan service. Ohigan is observed twice a year during the equinoxes, the spring and the fall equinox. It's a time when we remember our ancestors with gratitude, and when Buddhists concentrate on practicing the 6 paramitas or perfections of the heart as follows, which are Dharma, charity, and generosity. Sila, the practice of the precepts. Shanti, patience and humility. Virya, vigor or fortitude. Dhyana, meditation. And prajna, wisdom. In Sanskrit, the word paramita means crossing over to the other shore. The other shore is the shore of peace and enlightenment. The officiant of our service today is Reverend Jiko, who will be assisted by Deacon Eiheiji. We will begin with the Shobo Go Wasan by the Daifukuji Baikako Plum Blossom Choir. Please rise when the minister enters. Next, we will have the offering of flowers by the representative of the various temple groups and the Higan Go-san by the Baikako.
You may be seated.
Representing the Daifukuji Kyodan Board, Stephen Shoko Tanaka. Representing the Daifukuji Fujin Kai, Joyce Jiko Saint Armand. Representing the Baikako, Michiko Inomoto. Representing the Zazen Kai, Derek Hodo Nakamura. Representing the Dharma Keiki, Young Buddhist Association, Dharma message will now be presented by Reverend Jiko.
On this 19th day of March, in the year 2023, I, together with those assembled here at the Daifukuji Soto Mission in Kona, Hawaii, observed the Spring Ohigan service and the 33 Kannon pilgrimage. At this time of the spring equinox, we pay homage to the Buddha Shakyamuni and to our eminent ancestors of the Soto Zen lineage. We also express gratitude to our family ancestors, whose love, toil, and sacrifices have made our lives today possible. As Buddhists, we renew our determination to practice the 6 perfections of the heart, the paramitas, which help us to cross over from the shore of delusion to the shore of enlightenment. May our lives be illuminated by the wisdom of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May our hearts open to their compassion, and may we, together with all beings, awaken to Buddhahood. Namu Kie Butsu, Namu Kie Ho, Namu Kie So. We take refuge in the Buddha, we take refuge in the Dharma, we take refuge in the Sangha. Namu Shakyamuni Butsu, Namu Shakyamuni Butsu, Namu Shakyamuni Butsu.
Please rise for the Vandana Ti Sarana, which is on your program or page 17 in the Sutra book. And Now let us have a moment of zazen and silent meditation.
Please be seated.
Please be seated. Please join in the offering of Sanpai. 3 bows to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Next, let us chant the Heart Sutra, which can be found on the back of your program. We'll be chanting only in English this time.
Heart of great perfect wisdom sutra, Makanya Paramita Shinyo. Heart of great perfect wisdom sutra, Makanya Paramita Shinyo. Heart of great perfect wisdom sutra, Makanya Paramita Shinyo. Heart of great perfect wisdom sutra, Makanya Paramita Shinyo. Heart of great perfect wisdom sutra, Makanya Paramita Shinyo. Heart of great perfect wisdom sutra, Makanya Paramita Shinyo. Heart of great perfect wisdom sutra, Makanya Paramita Shinyo. Heart of great perfect wisdom sutra, Makanya Paramita Shinyo. Heart of great perfect wisdom sutra, Makanya Paramita Shinyo. Heart of great perfect wisdom sutra, Makanya Paramita Shinyo. Heart of great perfect wisdom sutra, Makanya Paramita Shinyo. Heart of great perfect wisdom sutra, Makanya Paramita Shinyo. Heart of great perfect wisdom sutra, Makanya Paramita Shinyo. Heart of great perfect wisdom sutra, Makanya Paramita Shinyo. Heart of great perfect wisdom sutra, Makanya Paramita Shinyo. Heart of great known in all its many forms. All sentient beings are awakened and brought to great peace and joy. Sincerely do we seek the guidance of the three treasures, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. At this Spring Ohigan service, we have recited the Heart of Great Perfect Wisdom Sutra and offered flowers, candlelight, food, and incense. We dedicate the merits of our practices to deceased members and ancestors, to all who have in the past supported our temple, to all victims of terror and wars, and to all beings in the Dharma world. From our hearts we pray for peace in our temple, peace in our community, and peace in our world. May all beings be guided by the Buddha's teachings and awaken to deep wisdom. And may we in our wholeness realize the way of the Buddha together.
Today's Dharma message will now be given by Reverend Jiko.
Good morning, everyone. Ohayou gozaimasu and aloha. So nice to see all of you here to observe the Spring Ohigan service held at the time of the spring equinox each year, and also to be followed by our 33 Kannon pilgrimage, which has been held annually at our temple every year since 1948. And I was just thinking that, this is the month of March, so it was, 3 years ago that we shut our doors when the pandemic was starting and things were so hard for everyone. And we have some Dharma friends here from Japan who came up to see me before the service, and they said this is their first time back in 3 years. So we thank our good friends everywhere for being here. I'd like to share with you the story of a pilgrimage which I took back in 2005. And I've shared this story, I think, a number of years ago, and every so many years I pull it out because it means a lot to me. Because prior to that, for many years, it had been my wish to go on a pilgrimage to Japan. I had gone to Japan prior to visit relatives, and when I was little, my mom and I went on a tour of Japan. And I even studied there for a couple of years when I was a college student. But I had never gone on a real pilgrimage, on a journey whose sole purpose was to pay my respects and offer prayers at sacred Buddhist sites. So in the course of my Zen training, the opportunity presented itself. Within a 2-year period, after receiving what we call Dharma transmission from my teacher, Reverend Ryuji Tamiya, I was permitted in the traditional Soto Zen manner to make formal visits to our head monasteries called Daihonzan. There are two, one called Eiheiji in Fukui Prefecture, and one called Sojiji, which is in Tsurumi near Yokohama City. And so the purpose was to pay my respects to our founders, Dogen Zenji and Keizan Zenji. And this formal visit to this monastery is called Zuise, and involves paying respects to the founders, participating in the morning service at the monasteries, staying overnight, receiving the certificate in the tea ceremony, officiating the ceremony, and meeting the Kannin Roshi, the head temple administrator. It's kind of a big deal that makes everybody who has to go through it very nervous. But having received the blessing and support of our Daifukuji board of directors, I was able to embark on this pilgrimage in 2005 and spend 9 days in Japan. It was from September 26th to October 5th. And my pilgrimage began on September 26th when I left for Japan. And while I was packing my suitcase, I looked at this, I had a green tea-colored rakusu. It's that kind of bib-like garment that priests wear that's a simplified form of this okesa, this formal robe. And I decided to take it with me because my path as a disciple of the Buddha actually began 25 years prior to that, in July of 1980. So I had grown up coming to this temple as a child, but I received the precepts, like many of you have, when I was in 1980, and at that time I was 19 years old, and I had received the precepts in a lay ordination ceremony at this nunnery in Nagoya called the Aichi Ceremony Sodo. And it was during that precept ceremony that I was given my Buddhist name, Jiko, by Bishop Suigan Yogo of Temple Saijoji on Daiyu Mountain in Odawara. So as I packed this tea-colored rakusu on which my name Jiko was written, I remembered not only how I received my name from Yogo Roshi, but how during my year of study at Komazawa Daigaku University in Tokyo, I had visited him at this well-known monastery called Saijoji. And while visiting him, how he had taken off his ojuzu, his prayer beads, and given them to me, and he wrote some Dharma words on a square of heavy, like a cardboard, called a shikishi, and he told me to study the Dharma and carry it back to Hawaii. So I was 22 years old, and I corresponded with Yogo Roshi for several years, but it turned out that was the last time that I saw him since he passed away after that. But for many years, from place to place, wherever I lived, I carried that shikishi, his calligraphy, and he had a very unique style of flowing, slender lines, and he had written the kanji komu, konomashi yume, literally something like a pleasant or good dream. But it has a much deeper meaning because it has a Buddhist word from the Shobogenzo. And although I didn't understand the significance of the words, I really treasured the gift from Yogo Roshi, and I thought, well, maybe someday I'll understand it better. So I left Daifukuji on September 26th. I wrote down 7:30 a.m. on a Monday, and 9 p.m. on Tuesday, I reached Niigata Station and saw Tamiya Sensei walking to greet me on the train platform. I was so relieved I got there. So it was a really happy reunion. I arrived at his temple in Niigata City called Ukisuko Genji in Sukefunecho, and it was late at night, so the night was dark. His family had all gone to bed, and he said, "Good night, Jiko. I will see you for our 6 a.m. morning service, and tomorrow I will shave your head." So when I woke, it was early Wednesday morning, 2 days after I left Kona, and at Kogenji, Tamiya Sensei's temple, the main hall called the Hondo, this is our Hondo, is upstairs, and they have a kitchen, bathroom, and Japanese style room downstairs. Kind of their hall is downstairs. And on their main altar was a big stone Ojizo-sama. So it's a little different from ours. We have Buddha Shakyamuni, but they had Jizo Bodhisattva on their altar. And the main hall was covered with many tatami mats and shoji doors, and there was the soft light that was filtered in through the shoji screens. So it was very beautiful. So every morning, Tamiya Sensei, his father, and I held the morning service at 6 a.m. And some mornings, Sensei and I sat in Zazen from about 5:30. We ended the service each morning by ringing the big bell outside the temple, the bonsho, had to be exactly at 6:30. In a Japanese, exactly 6:30. So whenever we rang the bell, the same, city bus went by. That's how exact it was. The bus went by. So I remember, after we rang the bell, I re-entered the temple, and I would do formal bows to Sensei's father, who was at that time 79 years old, Reverend Reiyu Tamiya. He always treated me with grandfatherly kindness. Reverend Reiyu Tamiya, he's about 97, I think, now. And I was happy at that time to see Noriko-san, Mrs. Tamiya, and Sky again. Sky was 4.5 years old, and he was a little shy when he saw me, but then he started calling me aunties. I know we were okay. And Sky, by the way, next month will be graduating from college, university. And then they had taken their dog, little black dog named Makai, back to Japan, and Makai recognized me, so I was really happy because I used to always play with her here. So Tamiya Sensei said, "Okay, are you ready, Jiko?" And I said, "Yes." So in a small room, he put on his rakusu, he lit some incense, and we did bows, and I sat in seiza on the tatami mat, and he just shaved all my hair off. All I can say is that it felt very natural to me, and I felt at home, at peace with my new head do. So later I emailed Amy because she was curious, what my head would look like. So I told her, well, Amy, my head actually is a kind of egg-shaped, just like her brother Ryan's. And I remember she wrote back and she said, "Gosh, Mom, aren't you glad it's not alien-shaped?" So during my 3 days at Kogenji, Sensei and I prepared for the Suise ceremonies that I would have to officiate at Eiheiji and Sojiji. And we visited Bishop Shugen Komagata's mother, Mrs. Teiko Komagata, at their temple Daifukuji in Muikamachi. And she made for me a big bowl of udon called shikara udon. Had a big piece of mochi in the udon. And she said, "It's to give you strength for when you go to Eiheiji and Sojiji." So that was a very precious time with her because she's since passed away. So Sensei and I climbed the mountain, we picked up chestnuts and we stuffed them into my pockets. And then behind that temple, there was a pilgrim's path to 33 Kannon-sama on the hillside. So we did that pilgrimage. It was outside, so beautiful. Then we went to 2 more temples on the way back to Niigata City. And we went to a temple that, well, it wasn't really a temple, it was like a hermitage, or sometimes they say hermitage, that Sensei had promised to take me to, called Gogo. It's the hermitage of the famous Zen poet monk named Ryokan, and it stood on Mount Kugami. And I always loved the poetry of this humble monk named Ryokan, who played with the children, drank sake with the villagers, and just lived intimately in nature. In the 18th century, he lived on alms. So visiting his hermitage was very special to me. And then Sensei and I left for Eiheiji Monastery. So, but before we got to Eiheiji, Sensei took me to visit my mother and father-in-law, my husband Mike's parents, because they live in Fukui Prefecture, although maybe 2 hours from Eiheiji. So we offered our prayers there at their Butsudan, family Butsudan, and then we went to Eiheiji 2 hours away by car. So we arrived at Eiheiji, a monastery which I hope you will have a chance to visit someday, if you haven't already done so, because going to Eiheiji is like stepping back in time to 13th century Kamakura period, Japan. So when we got there and registered, I had to go my way, and Sensei went to his special room, and I had to wait until 2 other monks arrived. They're called Zui Seshi. And they were 2 friendly monks. I was so glad. I was so nervous. And their names were Koki and Keizan. And so they were warm and friendly, which was so nice, because Eiheiji itself is a very strict monastery. The training there is very severe. The atmosphere is very, I don't know what you call it, kind of harsh, I guess. But the 2 monks were so good. They kind of guided me through the ceremonies, and we did so many prostrations and bows that although the air was cool, we were all just drenched in sweat because we had to wear our formal robes. So we put on our okesa, we went to the founder's hall, into the inner shrine, and we had to do a purification ritual using incense to purify our robes. And then, only then could we ascend these steps in the back of the altar to the kind of the innermost sanctuary of the founder's hall. And in a dark room, we did our bows again and paid our respects to Dogen Zenji, who is the founder. And that's the only time my whole life I had an opportunity to go to that back up those steep steps, because it's not open to the public. So everything was done in silence. I think I remember that I had gotten up at 2 a.m. that day to prepare. Like morning at Eiheiji starts at 3 a.m. for the monks. Every day training begins. So, I knew I would never have a chance again to return to Eiheiji as a Zue Seshi in that capacity. So I just carried the whole Daifukuji Sangha with me, and all my teachers in my heart and my body, and I just felt comforted knowing that Tamiya Sensei was somewhere in that monastery nearby, although I didn't know where he was. So we had this ceremony, a tea ceremony, and received our certificates from the head priest. And he said something like this. He said, "Monks, we congratulate you upon receiving the precepts and robes to become a true leaders of the Dharma, and in coming to this head monastery to conduct the Zuisei ceremony. We present the certificate with high hopes for your continuing devotion to the path of our founder and to the diligent effort to eliminate and enlighten all beings." So the ceremonies that followed, I don't know how many they were, I just sort of followed along, but it was like an endless stream of just bowing and bowing and bowing, and I had a hard time keeping up with the 2 very agile monks. I always would wear those house slippers inside, and they always were slipping off my feet, so I had to run back to go get them and then run again to catch up with the 2 monks. They just go, go, go. So there were two ceremonies, one praising the Buddha Shakyamuni, and the second one praising the founders of this monastery, Eiheiji. So thanks to Koki and Keizan, I kind of survived that ceremony. And then we had a formal tea with the head administrator. And they brought out two beautiful trays of shojin ryori, the vegetarian food that's prepared especially for guests at Eiheiji Monastery. So hopefully someday we can go together and pay our respects there. So after that, it was this is like a travel log. We went deep into the mountains to a temple in a place called Onofukui, temple called Hokyoji. And Hokyoji was the ancient temple established by Zenji. He is the monk from China who had followed Dogen Zenji back to Japan. So we know he had great admiration for Dogen because he left his homeland in China and went to Japan to train and establish a temple there. So it was raining when we got there, and two monks greeted us. Tamiya Sensei had also trained at Hokyoji, so he got special permission for us to visit this monastery, and the two monks unlocked the door to Hokyoji's treasure hall, where we were able to see this famous portrait of Dogen Zenji, as well as pieces of his original calligraphy from 13th century Kamakura period. So, it was very special to do that. And we went back to Sensei's temple, and I spent a lot of time with Sensei's father, Reverend Ryu Tamiya, and we repapered a shoji screen together, and he taught me how to repaper this Japanese lantern called an andon. And we just spent a lot of time working with the paper and the screen and talking. And then when it was all repapered, I remember Tamiya Sensei's father brought two chairs. We just sat in front of the screen and admired it for a long time together. It's so special. Then Tamiya Sensei's father showed me this large Japanese screen they had in the main hall. And because this is Niigata, the screen had the calligraphy of the monk Ryokan, the poet monk Ryokan. And as he read the poem to me in Japanese, I recognized it as a poem that I had read many times in English. And I really loved this poem. So as I listened to Tamiya Sensei's father recite it, I recognized it, and the tears just streamed down my face. I felt so connected to my Dharma family in Niigata, to Ryokan-sama, and I want to read the poem to you, the translation from John Stevens' book, One Robe, One Bow. My life may appear melancholy, but traveling through this world, I have entrusted myself to heaven. In my sack, 3 sho of rice, by the heart, a bundle of firewood. If someone asks, what is the mark of enlightenment or illusion? I cannot say. Wealth and honor are nothing but dust. As the evening rain falls, I sit in my hermitage and stretch out both feet in answer. So the time had come almost for me to leave, but I had to make one more formal visit now to Sojiji Monastery. So Tamiya Sensei and I, this time we took the train to Tokyo, then to Yokohama, and we went to Sojiji Monastery, which was in the city, unlike Eiheiji, which is up in the mountains. And at Sojiji, there was the same kind of zuisei ceremony, but because morning zazen was canceled that day at the monastery, I didn't have to wake up at 2 a.m. So I noted I woke up at 3 a.m. So Sojiji, I paid respects to founder, this is Keizan Zenji, this monk in this chair, and received my certificate from the Archbishop himself, the head priest. And to, like Eiheiji, I'm so nervous to go there because everything is how you move in the ceremony. You have to actually officiate the ceremony in front of, the 150 or 200 monk trainees, and I thought, oh gosh, I hope I don't stumble. Up and down, so many bows, and everything is kind of prescribed movement and how to do the ceremony. But that time, I had only one fellow monk with me going through the same ceremony. I don't remember his name, but he was a very serious monk who conducted himself with quiet dignity, and he kindly led me through the ceremonies. Luckily, they put me second, so I could just follow. It was so fast. But after saying goodbye to him, I asked the other monk, so who was this monk? But because there's no time, he didn't tell me his name. And I found out his last name was Yogo. Remember I talked about Yogo Roshi, who gave me my Dharma name Jiko at the nunnery? He was the grandson of Yogo Roshi. So, I just felt so grateful. So then it was time to go to the airport, but since it said we have so many hours left, is there any place you'd like to go before you leave Tokyo? And I said, I need to now go to Sojiji to pay my respects to Yogo Roshi before I leave. So we got the train to Odawara, and we got to the foot of Daiyu Mountain, and then it was raining so hard, there were no tourists on the bus at all, but we just hiked up the mountain in our robes, jumping over puddles, going through the forest and the mist, and at the puffing, and at the top of the mountain, we entered the dimly lit hall of Sojiji. Again, lots of sampai. We did our bows. The rain was falling steadily, and sitting in front of the altar in the dim light, I told Sensei, Tamiya Sensei, I feel the presence of Yogo Roshi here in this hall. And I thanked him for encouraging me to take this path, because he was the abbot there at that Sojiji. So Sensei and I walked around the room looking at the mokugyo and this big taiko. And then I said to Tamiya Sensei, thank you so much for all the guidance you've given me, for taking me in as your disciple and taking care of me. And I feel that, coming here, I feel my life has come full circle in some way. And then I turned around and I gasped. I saw this pillar. I was so startled. I kind of clutched out to Tamiya Sensei. There were in this dimly lit temple, huge pillars, much larger than this, with calligraphy on it, flowing calligraphy, Yogo Roshi's calligraphy. And when I looked at what was written on the temple, it was those words that Yogo Roshi had written on that shikishi that he had handed to me, right there on this pillar. Of course, I cried even more. So I felt somehow that Yogo Roshi had sent his grandson to help guide me through that second ceremony at Sojiji, because I really would not have been able to do it without someone to follow. It was such an intricate ceremony. I'd never done it before in Hawaii either. So it's with that overflowing heart that I left Japan, and I bid farewell to Tamiya Sensei at the train platform. I was waiting from the train. And in conclusion, I share with you this picture. So this is a formal picture taken of Reverend Tamiya and myself. This is at, we were much younger. This is at Sojiji Monastery, our formal photograph. So I have a photograph taken at Eiheiji and then one with Sojiji. So thank you so much for listening to my long story. But I wanted to set the tone by telling you the story for our pilgrimage. Because this is just a miniature pilgrimage around this hall. But I share my story encouraging everyone someday to go on a pilgrimage. You know, a lot of times we travel and it's mostly to do the touristy things. But when you go on a pilgrimage to sacred places, to whether they're temples or the Shinto shrines or churches, and if you go with this, it's as a spirit of it being an inner journey. You know, it's not an outer journey. It's an inner journey of connecting with each temple, each Buddha, each Bodhisattva, each teacher. So when you go on this pilgrimage today, you know, Betsy Kaiden will explain, but you will step on the actual soil or sand from each temple that's in that circle on the floor runner. That connects you with that temple, that Bodhisattva. And you look at the replica, the Bodhisattva in front of you, and you can say, Namu Kanze Om Bosatsu, or homage to Kannon Bodhisattva, and offer your prayer. There could be a prayer for healing. You know, everybody's suffering in some way or knows somebody who's suffering in some way. So even though it's a short pilgrimage, it can be a deeply healing journey to go to each Bodhisattva. So thank you so much for listening to this, and we will continue with our service. Namaskar.
Thank you very much, Reverend Jiko, for such a beautiful and inspiring Dharma message today. All right, we will please rise now for the singing of the Shonyo, which is on the back of your program. You may be seated. This concludes our Spring Ohigan service. We'll have a 5-minute intermission to prepare for the 33 Kannon pilgrimage.